2 years ago, a game called Hunt Down the Freeman went live on the Steam store for $25. All of the minute details about its design, about its disrespect towards the source material, and about its possible legality have all been discussed at length on a lot of other platforms. But to fill you in, Hunt Down the Freeman is a paid Half-Life game that is sold on Valve's storefront that Valve had nothing to do with, and in fact, was an excellent example of Valve's laissez-faire nature shooting them in the foot. Because Hunt Down the Freeman 2 years later is still on the Steam store. A game that allegedly uses assets stolen from the Garry's Mod Workshop, a game by all accounts was not playable end-to-end for months following launch, and a game that did not understand the source material and abused the community's want for a new Half-Life game to make a cheap sale as quickly as possible. And now, 2 years on, Hunt Down the Freeman, for better or for worse, has had a profound effect on the Valve community as a whole, and both the negatives and few positives that do exist because of it need to be stated outright. These are the long-term effects of Hunt Down the Freeman.
This might crash though, huh? Yeah. I win! I did it!
Yeah, this is only available for 7 days, by the way. Crowdmade.com, link down in the description. Hope you can get one in time. The first few weeks following launch were confusing. Me personally, I live streamed the entire day one build of the game in one sitting. At the time, it was one of my most successful live streams due to just how insanely weird the situation was. When does a multi-billion-dollar company allow the use of their franchise in such a weird way to be officially supported, at least in the public's eye, because of its sale on the official storefront owned by that same company? Rumors were all over the place. People were claiming that illegal files were found within the build. People were claiming that most of the assets were stolen without original creators' permission. And people were also claiming that $50,000 was somehow spent on this game never to be recuperated. The game pulled online celebrity voice talent just for the means of the clout, some of these actors allegedly never to be paid. There was a pretty major problem though. Valve was not comfortable commenting on the Half-Life franchise at this time. We all know now that at the time they were in heavy development for what would become Half-Life Alyx. But also at the time were a few other major virtual reality titles. Half-Life Alyx was not the main focus of the company. Valve always playtests their games in almost any part of development. And following the release and major PR nightmare that was Hunt Down the Freeman, there were conversations that were held with playtesters that pretty much just devolved into, well, what should you do in order to counteract what happened with Hunt Down the Freeman? Did you see that live stream with that McVicker kid? What would he think of this VR title that you're working on? Hunt Down the Freeman caused some pretty major headaches in the Source Engine modding communities. For one, immediately following the game's release, it was impossible to get a license. You see, Source Engine is still a thing that people can license out and develop retail products for. Under very strict circumstances, you can use Valve's IP. However, we've all been under the assumption that in order to use Valve's IP for a retail product, you need Valve's strict written permission, and apparently Hunt Down the Freeman had that. However, the fact that they did underlines a problem that Valve doesn't really pay attention to what people are pitching them. And for a long time, they were just writing off every major thing that was sent to them. Following Hunt Down the Freeman, some relationships were severed immediately. There were development teams that never heard back from Valve. And then something strange happened. Licenses were given out far more frequently. Instead of trying to pull the entire system following this debacle of Valve essentially supporting what is a horrific game, Valve instead started supporting significantly more projects. Anybody that was following the Source Engine developer community understood that they were giving out licenses far faster. A lot of these projects are still unreleased at the current time. However, there are far more projects using a Source Engine's development license than there were before Hunt Down the Freeman had come out. Valve was looking at competing with this massive blunder by trying to generate more positive community attention. But of course, there's always a caveat. Internally, Hunt Down the Freeman was a massive thorn in a lot of developers' sides. But again, Valve doesn't publicly comment on anything. They remained silent on Hunt Down the Freeman and continued to for years. And they always will. Valve's response to this community blunder, and effectively many blunders that followed, such as Artifact, the Epic Game Store, a decade without a major title release, caused them to double down on their own projects. And this is where I need to be careful with what I say, because allegedly, the developers of Hunt Down the Freeman twist anything into some positive public relations for themselves. For example, did you know that the director of Hunt Down the Freeman regards the development time of that game to be time that they worked at Valve, according to this developer's LinkedIn profile? That LinkedIn profile helped get that person a job at Activision Blizzard, working on Call of Duty Mobile. Valve, during all of this, did two major things. Number one, they rewrote the story of Half-Life Alyx. Obviously, it's not entirely to do with Hunt Down the Freeman, but it happening around the same time that the original story was receiving a lot of negative feedback from playtesters and developers definitely added up to bringing Wolpaw back and finishing up the story in a completely different way. And then, of course, finishing up the game entirely. There is a series of events that traces back to the release of Hunt Down the Freeman that effectively states that if that game hadn't happened, Valve may not have finished Half-Life Alyx. That's the biggest long-term effect of you fucked up my face. If you are watching this report on the day that it released, I am going to be live streaming the entirety of Hunt Down the Freeman for the very last time at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on my Twitch page. This is the final time I am ever talking about or playing the game ever. There's a lot more positivity coming into this community, and I want to put the final nail in the coffin for myself and my brand. So, if you want to join and play the 2nd year anniversary live stream of Hunt Down the Freeman, my Twitch page is down in the description below, and if you're watching this following the release of the video, the VOD of that live stream will be up on my 2nd channel. The link to that will be in the description once the VOD is available. I'm Tyler McVicker. This is Valve News Network. It's just how it is, you know? Adios.